Poker's legendary champions, next generation stars, and tireless ambassadors of the game, sharing their wisdom and guiding your journey to high achievement on the green felt. This is Tactical Tuesday on Chasing Poker Greatness with your host, Brad Wilson.
Welcome to another episode of Tactical Tuesday. Once again, I am joined by my co-host, Jon, for this very tactical of days. Jon, how you doing, sir?
How's it going? We got a good theme this time, or a strong theme this time across both of the hands that we're going to be breaking down. The theme is going to be finding bluffs and thinking about bluff sizing on 4 flush runouts. I think that's one of the situations where I kind of struggle to know what the right hands to bluff are, and also like what the right sizing to go is. I think a lot of things that I think about when it comes to bluffing sort of go out the window on 4 flush runouts. Like blockers don't really matter, aren't really a thing, for example. So yeah, just a couple 4 flush runout bluffs that I thought it'd be cool to get your opinion on both whether it's an appropriate situation to bluff and whether my river sizing makes sense.
Cool. Let's do it. Let's dive into these hands. So you got Queen Jack of Hearts. You open at 22 under the gun, and the big blind defends. Do we know anything about the big blind?
The big blind is a reg as far as we know.
All right. So we have a reg in the big blind. Flop is 8-6 deuce, all diamonds. You have the Queen Jack of Hearts. Villain checks, and you bet half pot.
Yep. So just kind of going off a data read here that just villains in general, or regs in general, struggle to defend against big sizes on monotone boards. So while I think this is definitely going to look a little strange in the pool, half pot is now kind of my go-to bluff size on monotone boards in position.
And what would the pool normally do? Like a third?
I would expect a lot of checking on this flop, maybe like close to pure check. And if they were going to have a strategy that included betting, probably really, really small sizes, like under a third, or maybe even as far down as a quarter pot.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. So you bet half pot, villain calls. Turn is the 5 of spades, completing our hand of Queen Jack of Hearts, and then absolutely nothing on the board. No connection, no anything. And villain goes ahead and checks. And so the action is on you with this Queen Jack of Hearts on no pair, no draw, no connectivity. And you opt to bet 2/3. Tell me about your decision to bet here.
Just following through with the plan on the flop. Planning on certainly over bluffing these flop textures by going like large. Even if I get called here on the turn, my plan is to blast the river one more time.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I probably would check here personally. I think that, like, theoretically, okay, so villain has a fair amount of flushes. Villain's got a bunch of sets. Like, I don't know that we have a ton of 3 street value hands. Like, black aces, for instance, is not going to go for 3 streets, I wouldn't imagine, on this monotone board. So, like, when you polarize on the turn, you're repping basically flushes and then not flushes. And I just think it's hard to have a flush. Like, you know what I mean? So I don't know. It's hard to have like a lot of repability here. Like, you're just not repping a ton of super strong hands. So, I mean, obviously, and you mentioned it, that this is an exploit, but I would personally just check back and then kind of use the data point of whether villain checks or bets the river and kind of make my decision from there. But I just think that, like, it's hard to realize a bunch of fold equity when we don't have a ton of hands that just want to barrel through.
I agree. I mean, I think that I definitely do think that I'm repping just like an incredibly narrow value range here. I think I probably would also bet sets on the turn, the flop and the turn. So I think just like in my defense, I think I have a few more value hands than just flushes. But yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
mean,
got six more combos of sixes and eights.
yeah. Oh, five. Well, yeah, I probably don't bet fives on the flop. You're right.
Maybe 7-9 suited. Maybe we got the 7-9 suited in there. We got some straights.
Yeah. If I don't know if I opened that under the gun, but anyways, like basically like the I'm sort of saying screw all that, like screw all the the fact that I'm repping so thin. Like I think just going the exploit of the fact that the big blind is not going to be able to defend even close to enough facing 3 big bets on a monotone flop is really like what I was leaning on more so than how our actual range interacts with this board.
Yeah, I mean, I think while I understand the thought, I still don't think that like we generate a ton of folds because like repping a narrow value range against a player who is likely a non-believer at heart and can hand read and recognize you don't have a ton of value, like, is problematic in and of itself, right? Like we're still playing this hand in isolation. So yeah, I think just like strategically, a lot of your hands want to play for one more bet, all the over pairs, for instance. And even like your top pairs, your 8-9 suiteds or whatever. So like, yeah, I just think that like when you check behind the turn, you have a higher concentration of bluff catchers on the river, which makes villains less likely to bet the river because, we do have a fair amount of hands that can bluff catch. And also so basically like if they're less likely to bluff the river when they bet, they eliminate some of the value hands in their range and they're more likely to fold versus the stop and go, if that makes sense.
They eliminate value hands when they bet. Oh, I see. Okay, yeah. So when their checking range is slightly weaker than their betting.
Right.
Okay.
So like when they check, we get a natural opportunity to bet the river.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I would check back here just for those reasons, just because like, I don't know, when you play against like these guys that understand the pot odds model and are trained to sniff out bluffs and to call a lot, it's hard repping thin against them because like that's going against what their natural instinct is to do, and that is to like sniff out bluffs, and find call downs,
Okay.
And now we have the king of diamonds on the river, completing our hand of absolute squadouche. And the villain in question checks. And I mean, at this point, we've we're going all the way, I think, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm definitely bluffing this river. I thought that I think without the 4 flush coming in, I probably would have just defaulted to bluffing a big size. I thought that when the 4 flush completes, I wasn't sure that the big size accomplishes anything or significantly more than the small size does. Basically what I'm saying there is that like I don't think it folds out significantly more hands than just betting small in this spot. I don't think a flush of almost any size is ever folding unless I go really, really, really big, maybe. Like overbet, like some sort of overbet. And I think like regardless of the size that I bet, like a lot of 1 pair hands that haven't improved to a flush are going to struggle to find a call. Like a hand like 7-8 or 8-9 without a diamond is just going to
assuming like, that hand calls the turn.
Right. Assuming those hands call the turn, are going to struggle to find a call versus any size on the river once the 4 flush gets there. So I decided to size down in this spot, which is pretty rare for me. I think like previous Tactical Tuesday listeners will like know that I rarely ever size down on my bluffs. This spot felt appropriate to size down to a third just to try to fold out the 1 pair hands and whatever we're getting called by, thinking we're getting called by flushes anyway. So I guess what do you think about the decision to go for it here and sizing down to a third pot?
So we've polarized on the turn, right? If you have the ace jack of diamonds, what would your sizing be on the river?
I think I'd be really tempted to go small exploitatively, but I'm guessing like if I don't think any flushes are ever folding, which is what I just said, I should just be going big with the hands that are like really nutted on the turn and are obviously still nutted on the river.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that like you just target villains, bluff catchers, and go big on the river with your nutted hands.
Yeah.
Like, so to me, it's like we're repping like a thinnish value range on the turn, and we go big, and then we like shift gears and go small. I mean, you know, I just don't.
Flush that's not the nut flush.
Huh?
Could be any flush that's like not the nut flush. I feel like would be somewhat reasonable to play that way. Like if you had queen jack of diamonds, which is now like not that exciting of a bet on the turn, or like jack 10 of diamonds or something like that, and you're trying to find ways to get called by worse hands.
Yeah, you could size down. I think it makes sense. I just, yeah, I mean, maybe, but I don't know how you structuring your sizing on the flop and the turn, where you're trying to generate folds, and admittedly stated earlier that villains struggle to continue frequently enough on these type of boards. Like, it just means that when they do call, like, they tend to have okay hands that are unlikely to be folding on the river to the small bet. So, you know, I'm not exactly sure here. And I would, so I don't know how I feel about the small bet on the river, but going back to the turn, I wouldn't have bet the turn, which kind of like puts me in a weird space on the river, because like I wouldn't have played it this way. And so now I'm in at this node that I'm unsure what exactly I want to do here.
So if you check back turn and face check on the river, you're going larger, like.
I would probably go big. Yeah, I would probably go big.
Yeah.
Somewhere around 90% pot, or overbet, or just something quite large.
Yeah.
Most likely.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think if you really want to generate folds, like, then you should just go really big here. Like, just go 1.5x pot. Like, I don't know. I really just don't like the small bet here.
Okay. Makes sense. I mean, the play, or the tool in my arsenal that I rarely use, I don't know how to use it properly.
Yeah. It does make sense. It does make sense, the rarely used tool. And I think for, Tactical Tuesday listeners, that's something that, like, yeah, when you're doing something that you don't normally do, or that's outside of your norm, be prepared to struggle with it early on. Be prepared to struggle with it when you do it, just because it's not a thing that you do very often. And when you don't do something very often, you tend to not have like a super great understanding of when and why to use it. Okay, so
just finish with just to cap off that statement about not being sure when and why to use it. I do bluff the river for small. I bet 70 into 216 and get pretty quickly called, I think, by pocket tens with the 10 of diamonds. So not like a particularly illuminating hand, in the sense that like we just expect that hand to call all day, might even call like a larger size. If I was getting called by like tens without a diamond, I think that would very clearly prove that my bluff is not very good. If I was getting folds from those sorts of hands, I think that maybe we could start feeling a little bit better about this bluff. But
yeah,
not too much that I think we can take away from this hand when they call with the 10 of diamonds.
No, I think like on the flop and turn is where you're building your funeral pyre and pushing it out to sea, and the river is the flaming arrow that just lights the rest of it on fire. All right, so that's it for the first hand. After the break, we're gonna look at another 4 flush spot, see what developed. Maybe something good will happen. I don't know. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In a world where a fish dog bets the flop, and you don't know what to do, One man
Coach Brad Wilson.
has a surefire plan to neutralize flop leads and rip that dunk to shreds. Nuffle. Available now. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com/nuffle. Rated R.
All right, welcome back to today's Tactical Tuesday. This is Coach Brad and Jon breaking down some hands where we bluff on 4 flush runouts. And I see that we start with a pair, so I'm just going to imagine that you're bluffing with a pair here, Jon. There's no way to escape it.
Maybe it even turns into a set or something later on. No, I'm
Maybe
just kidding. It doesn't. Not this time.
Yeah. It's hard for the board to double pair and get a 4 flush run out. I don't think that's possible, but I guess let's see what develops here. So cutoff opens to 22.5. You 3-bet to 100 from the small blind. For the podcast listener, they're playing effective 100 big blinds. And now the cutoff 4 bets to 247. Thoughts here about jamming, calling?
I wasn't really considering jamming. I guess you could jam. Like, it wouldn't be the end of the world to jam tens, but I think I would jam something like jacks plus or like queens plus and do a little bit more flatting with pocket tens. I think if there was a reason to jam, it might be that this 4-bet is pretty big. It's like 2.5x in position. I don't think that's like a great reason to jam, but just the fact that he sized up makes me want to play a little more jam fold than jam fold call. That being said, though, I'm 99% of the time I'm just going to be calling the pocket tens here.
Yeah, we didn't say it, but I assume villain is a reg.
Yeah, he's a reg. I think
he or she.
Yeah.
And you call, and we get an ace of clubs, 7 of diamonds, 3 of diamonds. So not an amazing flop for us.
I'm like ready to check fold already.
Yeah, a lot of their 4-bet lower equity 4-bets would contain an ace. So really tough to figure out like what we have an advantage against now.
Mm-hmm.
So you check, and our opponent mercifully just checks behind. Although even them checking behind is not very merciful because it's honestly, if they had a weaker hand that they 4-bet with, it's most likely that they would bet this flop. So yeah, I'm still not loving the spot that we're in here with the tens. Maybe we can make a 10 on the turn. We don't. The turn is the deuce of diamonds, so we have the ace of clubs, 7 tray, deuce of diamonds. You have 10 of hearts, 10 of spades. So once again, you've not improved at all. You check, and the villain checks behind once again, which...
Wow. 2 chances to hit a 10.
2 chances to hit a 10. And I think this check... I think it makes sense that this is how they're going to structure their strategy, like checking back flop and then checking back turn, even when the deuce of diamonds rolls off. So we get a 9 of diamonds on the river. So now, even in some weird universe where they 4-bet 9s, we're losing to that. I can't really imagine a hand that you're beating right now, so I think that's past the test as far as like turning your 10s into a bluff.
Well, we found the spot.
Yeah, basically when you have you've gotten yourself into a position where your hand is effectively worthless. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You found it.
It has to be one of the worst hands that I ever get to the river with in a 4-bet plot, especially like this river. I guess I will have some like suited broadways that haven't made flushes that are slightly worse or that are worse than 10s, but really this is like as close to the bottom as it gets.
And let's see what sizing you chose, because I assume you bet.
Oh wait. What sizing? Talk about appropriate sizing here, because I really wasn't sure. Like, what am I trying to fold out? I guess is the way that I would start thinking about this question.
Kings through kings and queens.
Yeah.
I mean,
Without a
that's
diamond. Yeah.
the kings and queens, no diamond. Those are the hands that you're trying to fold out, I would imagine. I mean, I'm of two minds, I guess. So I think that I would just go like 70% pot. I think. On first glance, the overbet does make some sense. Although I don't think they fold. Like, I don't think we move the needle as it relates to fold equity with the overbet. Like, I don't think jacks with the jack of diamonds would ever fold versus a rip here on the river,
I think more importantly, it's not that it doesn't fold to a rip, but like it doesn't look at 70% and a rip and like think like, well, okay, instead of 70 he rips, so I'm gonna fold my jacks now. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't like bias very much additional fold equity, right? Which is like kind of how to gauge these types of situations. So like if the much larger bet has diminishing returns as it relates to fold equity, then you probably shouldn't be using it. Which, by the way, means, I guess, as an aside, that if you did have like, ace queen with the ace of diamonds, or ace queen of diamonds, then like jamming feels like it makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, I agree.
So on that same token, like I would just bet like, I don't know, 70 or 90%, 450, 350, somewhere in that ballpark. Probably the 90%, I think. That would be my preferred.
Here.
Boom.
Exactly
Busted out
90.
the exactly 90% club here on the river. Yeah, I think I like the sizing. I think it's good. And we're going to end on a positive note, I hope. I mean, I don't really care. I don't care what Villain does here exactly on the river. But I think that a positive note as it relates to like the way the hand was played, I'm down.
Oh. And the result is pretty good too.
Yeah, the result is good. They fold. Good for them. And the hand that they fold is two black kings. So, yeah, just folded out the hands that you're targeting, which I guess is good.
Thank God this guy just doesn't range a quarter on the flop. That's what I was thinking.
Well, maybe. I mean, maybe. Like, but they can't foresee that this is going to be the run out and they're going to get bluffed, right? Like, they don't know the result of the turn in the river. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you bluff if it's not a four flush run out?
That's a good question. I definitely don't feel like as compelled, which I don't think that's necessarily good. Like as soon as I saw the diamond, I was just like, oh my God, my hand sucks. Like I have to do something about this.
That was when you realized your hand sucked when the fourth diamond came out?
I mean, it's like on the flop, it's like bad. On the turn, it's like bad. On the river, it's like just
Oh, it was pretty bad at every street.
Yeah.
The flop, and the turn, and the river for sure. I don't think the river actually changes your hand as much as you would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than the fact that like I think like kings and queens without a diamond are like way more likely to fold if I bomb the river on a four flush run out than if it doesn't. I mean, like when he checks back his hand twice on the flop and turn in a 4-bet pot in position, like I would be pretty scared of going for some bluff on the river on the non 4-flush run out, just thinking like, well, he's not checking back kings so that he can fold them like on the river.
You know how you could go back and analyze the hand number one decision?
Mm-hmm.
Is that like this spot is quite similar to hand number one in what you're trying to accomplish by betting the river.
Yeah.
You're trying to fold out pairs that don't have a diamond.
Mm-hmm.
In hand number one, you chose a third, and hand number two, you chose 90%.
Yeah.
So, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, there's clearly a disconnect there in that your mission is the same in both spots, and yet two different sizings were chosen.
Yeah. Oh, got to figure out which one works. Now I know.
They had a flush in the first one and they didn't in the second one. So like we still don't actually know. We learned literally
no.
nothing
Don't bluff
based
small
on these two
kids.
hands. Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we didn't learn anything. I hope the Tactical Tuesday audience learned at least something. I don't know what they learned, but I hope something on this week's episode of Tactical Tuesday. Besides that, yeah.
When in doubt, bluff big. I think that's what I learned.
Yes. Bluff big so that you never have to get any reps bluffing small ever again. Just avoid that tool altogether.
End up like me and never know when to use the small bluff size that way.
All right, man. Well, we're going to close down shop. Y'all have a great rest of your week. And if you are looking for more feedback on how you play your hands or anything going on in your poker game, hit up greatnessvillage.com, hop in our Slack community, ask questions, poke around, all the things. John, anything left?
See you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening to Chasing Poker Greatness. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts or on your favorite podcast app. Go to chasingpokergreatness.com to get the newsletter. Join the Greatness Village community, book a coaching session, or dive into the latest data-driven poker courses. Follow the show on Twitter @CPG Podcast.